everybody, welcome back to Let's Talk. I am your host John, and today here on the channel we're going to be talking about 1993's Tombstone and its brand new Disney 4K Blu-ray that just came out. But before we get into that 4K Blu-ray review, I always like to give a quick film review, and today is no different. So if you don't want to know anything about the film Tombstone and you're just here to check out that review for the brand new 4K, you guys can skip ahead to that right now. So back in 1993, the world gave us Tombstone, directed by George Cosmatos. It was written by Kevin Jarre, I think I'm saying that right, and he was actually supposed to be the person to direct this film. It was going to be his directorial debut, but he couldn't manage everything, and honestly, the guy never directed a film in his entire life, so probably was just too overwhelmed with the job of being a director. So they brought in somebody who was more of a front to be a director, because apparently the rumor is that most of this film is actually directed by Kurt Russell. And clearly this is a story that Kurt Russell was heavily invested in. He fell in love with Wyatt Earp. He did all this research on Wyatt Earp. And clearly he just loves the guy Wyatt Earp, because he named his son Wyatt Russell, I assume after Wyatt Earp. And this is definitely the best Wyatt Earp film that is out there. It's funny because Hollywood usually doubles up on movies. Think of like Armageddon and Deep Impact. It just seems to always happen where a tale is told in Hollywood from two different angles, and usually one film is much better than the other. And it's the same in this case. We got Tombstone in 1993, but the next year, Lawrence Kasdan's Wyatt Earp came out, which also has a very stacked cast featuring Kevin Costner and Gene Hackman, so you know that movie should have been really good on paper as well, but this movie was such a success when it came out, had a phenomenal 1990s score, and then at the center of it all were some phenomenal performances, even if you just don't think of the major performances in this movie, like Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer, like the big performances. Val Kilmer, a lot of people would argue that him as Doc Holliday is his career best performance, and it's hard to disagree with that. He is phenomenal in this film. He gets to, give the very flashy performance of Doc Holliday, a man dying of tuberculosis, has a very severe alcohol problem, but he's also very loyal to Wyatt Earp and the Earp brothers. He considers Wyatt Earp to be one of the best lines in the movie is, when the guy says, "Oh, I'm here for Wyatt Earp," he's like, "He's my friend." And then the guy's like, "I have plenty of friends." He's like, "I don't." So that just means how loyal of a friend he is to a guy who never looked down on him. And you hear it in the very beginning of this movie, the Earp brothers, Kurt Russell, Bill Paxton, and Sam Elliott, they're just like, we're going to settle down. We're not going to be lawmen anymore. We're going to finally get rich and enjoy our lives. Of course, that doesn't work out like any good Western. The pull to save the town, and this town is really under attack from Curly Bill, played by the great Powers Booth, and Johnny Ringo, played by one of my all-time favorite actors, given not somebody who has a huge body of work, but I still will always love Michael Biehn thanks to his performance as Kyle Reese in The Terminator. So he's great. These two guys and their gang of Rough Riders are trying to take over the town like any good Western, and of course the Earps are gonna intervene. Now, given Wyatt Earp and all of these characters for the most part are real characters, obviously this is an over-exaggerated version of some real stuff that did happen, like the shootout at the OK Corral. That's a big part of Wyatt Earp's history. They explored that again in 1994's Wyatt Earp. I don't know if it was done as good as it is in this movie, but this movie deals with that scene phenomenally. This is only like a window into Wyatt Earp's life, and it's really about that relationship between him and Doc Holliday. That's why Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer's performances stand out. Given this cast is just so stacked. Billy Bob Thornton gets the shit slapped out of him very early in the movie.
Listen, mister, I'm getting awful tired of your...
I'm getting tired of your gas. Now jerk that pistol and go to work. You gonna do something or just stand there and bleed?
Billy Bob Thornton, before he actually lost all that weight and became a Hollywood known, given I believe this is right around the same time that One False Move came out, but it's just funny to see him in this, get the shit slapped out of him, and then just kind of try and mosey back on up to him, and then he just gets shunned away again. Love that. Terry O'Quinn, who's obviously most famous for Lost, but I'll always love him from The Stepfathers in this movie. Thomas Hayden Church, Billy Zane, Michael Rooker. I mean, I know I'm forgetting people because every small role is filled by somebody who you'd recognize, or even Wyatt Earp the Third is in here. Robert Mitchum does the narration, which makes all the sense in the world. Robert Mitchum just has one of those iconic voices. He opens and closes the movie, sends us home happy. The ending, though, is purposely trying to send us home happy, and I don't know if the love storyline necessarily works in this type of movie. You're really there to see the bond between the brothers. It really does feel like kind of a man's movie, given like the emotional relationship stuff. You kind of have to have it in there. I feel like that was something that was written into the screenplay, that it had to be in an early 1990s film. We couldn't just have the friendship be between Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp. We kind of had to have this love angle working in the background, and I don't necessarily think the film needs it. I think the relationship between the brothers and Doc Holliday, I think all of that is enough to drive this movie. I don't think we need to go into what Wyatt Earp is doing in his personal life, given it does give us some fantastic scenes in this movie, beautiful looking scenes, and we need to slow down the pace a little bit, so they do serve a purpose. I just don't think necessarily in the grand scheme of the film that's the stuff that works for me. I personally just prefer the relationship between the brothers, and you could just see how much they care about each other. And even if they disagree with each other, like Sam Elliott and Kurt Russell, like even when they butt heads, they're loyal to each other. They love each other. They'll do anything for each other. They're allowed to say these things to each other. Like Bill Paxton's like, I just thought I was doing what you would do. Like the way he reveals his badge, like, Bill Paxton clearly is the more innocent one of those two. Doesn't want to see his two brothers fight, but they are going to fight because they're hard-headed. Bill Paxton's perfectly cast in this role. But again, it's really about Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp, and the two performances from Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer. And it's really a shame that Val Kilmer wasn't recognized for this role, because he absolutely deserved it. He is the heart of this movie. His relationship with Wyatt, you're kind of hoping that he's going to pull through in the end, but of course we know that this is tuberculosis at a time when tuberculosis wasn't going to be cured. He comes out to the desert because hopefully that's going to dry him out a little bit, but of course he also has an extremely bad drinking problem, so his death was unfortunately inevitable. But the last scene between Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer, that's the stuff that, it's going to leave you emotional. Of course, again, like I said, we kind of have to end it on a happy note, but I would have been fine if we ended it there, because they're the heart of this movie. Once we beat Curly Bill and Johnny Ringo, like, we got to move on from that. And I think if we would have just ended it there, this movie would be like almost a perfect Western. But given this is still an almost perfect Western, it's one of the most mainstream Westerns of all time. It moves along at a very brisk pace. It's got that 1990s score, so you just know it's going to make you feel good, make you feel happy. It's got those like epic performances in there. It really does feel special while you're watching this. I put this in probably my top 10 Westerns of all time, but I don't know if I could put it up there in the upper echelons with the Once Upon a Time in the West and Unforgiven, just because it does feel a little bit too mainstream Hollywood-y, especially with the look of some of these people. Even though the look was very intentional in what they were going for, and most of the people in this movie have actually real mustaches, so if you're an appreciator of a good mustache, Kurt Russell's the king of this. I mean, just look at movies in the future, he would be the real king of this. He would get even better than his mustache as Wyatt Earp with movies like Bone Tomahawk, and then, of course, The Hateful Eight. The guy would become a Western king, maybe not on the levels of, like, John Wayne or Clint Eastwood, but Kurt Russell knows how to hold his own in a Western, which is crazy because Kurt Russell is just one of these actors that's been around since he was a kid, and he's still acting to this very day. You got to watch his entire career come up through the entire Hollywood system, and he eventually just settled into his own role to the point that people are like, that's Kurt Russell. Kurt Russell is one of the most reliable actors in Hollywood. He's always going to give you a good performance. It's really a shame he never truly did also get the recognition for his great work. The Academy is just weird like that. I don't know if he's ever had an Academy Award winning performance in there, but Tombstone does come pretty close. And again, Val Kilmer, at the very least, should have been nominated for an Academy Award. And it's actually really a shame when it comes to Val Kilmer, because I believe he never even received a single Oscar nomination, despite the fact that this guy is a very committed, very good actor. Between this movie and Heat in 1995, I don't understand why we couldn't give him at least a Best Supporting Academy Award nomination. But, I mean, time has been very good to this film. At the time, the movie was, a pretty good financial success. It was a $25 million budget, made $75 million worldwide, so it made its money back. And then ever since then, this movie's developed a huge cult following. I know there's people who watch this channel who love Tombstone and would consider it their favorite film of all time. And, I can appreciate that. And today we're also here to talk about the 4K Blu-ray that just came out, so let's get right into that.
You tell him I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Well, here it is, Tombstone, one of the most anticipated 4K Blu-ray releases of all time. People have been waiting a very long time for Tombstone to finally come to 4K Blu-ray, and thankfully Disney teamed up with Sony. Disney Buena Vista was the ones who put this out, but that partnership from Disney and Sony that happened last year, This is one of those things that we were hoping would finally come to 4K Blu-ray, and between this and Kingdom of Heaven next year, it looks like we're going to be eating good in the neighborhood. And this 4K Blu-ray will be replacing this Blu-ray that I had, a very cheap Blu-ray that came out years ago. Like I was saying previously, Blu-rays didn't get the same kind of treatment that like 4K Blu-rays get when it comes to the packaging. Especially nowadays, they're really trying to force upon you the 4K Steelbook. This 4K Steelbook here in the United States is the only option you can, if you want to get that slipcover edition, that has to be imported. That's a UK Region B release, not a United States release, and that is the first issue I have with this, because it forces us to spend a lot of money on something that we necessarily can't afford. When this was up for pre-order, it was $55. Now, if you pre-order this through Amazon, you're able to get it for the lowest price guaranteed before it ships. And in my case, it happened to drop to $41 at one point, and because of free shipping, that's exactly what I spent, was $41. But if you pre-ordered it anywhere else and it was $55, you were locked into that $50 price tag. If you bought it through like Orbit or Diabolic when they were $40, you also have to pay shipping. So it could end up being almost $50 regardless. And that's a lot of money to pay for one film on 4K Steelbook. But this is a highly anticipated 4K Blu-ray. People, like I was saying, have been waiting years for Tombstone to come to 4K. Just like a lot of Disney films, Disney kind of holds their movies hostage. Think of like Fight Club, movies like Terror and Hooch that I would love on 4K Blu-ray. Like those kinds of movies, Disney just, they're not going to do it. They're not going to put them all out. But luckily, they've teamed up with Sony and they're giving us the kind of movies we've been asking for on 4K Blu-ray, which makes complaining about them a little bit tough, because it's like, will we get these in the future if we don't buy them and we don't support these companies? And it's almost like Disney's holding us hostage because they know that we want these movies on 4K Blu-ray, and to charge that much money, they know we're going to pay. Like, the movies have been selling out because this is a movie that is so beloved and it's coming to 4K Blu-ray that it's tough for people to say no to it. FOMO's a real thing, especially in the collector's market. I mean, like, even for me, like, I wanted Tombstone on 4K Blu-ray. I didn't get that feeling with Willow last year, but Tombstone is one of those movies that I love. I was saying in my review, it might not be a top 5 Western of all time for me, but it falls into the top 10. It's very enjoyable. It's extremely rewatchable, so of course I would want to replace my previously released Blu-ray with that. The thing is, you're charging boutique level prices, like Criterion or Scream Factory, who put their heart and soul, Arrow Video, who put their heart and soul into their releases. And if you're going to go that route and charge this much money, I assume you're going to put your heart and soul into these releases as well. Well, let's get into it. Like I was saying, we get this 4K Steelbook, only option here in the United States. When you come inside, it is a 2-disc set, a 4K Blu-ray and a Blu-ray. And that Blu-ray is a downscaled version of the new 4K scan, so it's a different scan from that previously released Blu-ray, which is good. We'll talk about the scan in a second. That's the only thing that's really new in here, though, unfortunately, guys, is you get that 4K Blu-ray and that Blu-ray with the new scan, and that's it. You're getting a visual upgrade. That's what you're here for, is just for those visuals. The audio is exactly the same. It's a DTS HD Master Audio 5.1. The extras, an extras junkie like myself, it does include the making of documentary that was on the previously released Blu-ray, so you get nothing new there. And that's really it. You get some storyboards and some trailers. So if you're an extras junkie and you were hoping for some new extras, like a looking back, some interviews with guys like Kurt Russell and Sam Elliott, who are still alive, maybe even get their thoughts on Bill Paxton and Val Kilmer. I mean, Val Kilmer, he's passed away pretty recently, so maybe you could have got an interview with him last year when you were putting this all together. I don't know, but you didn't get anything new. You know, you just gave us what we already had. And like I was saying in the review, this is a movie that replaced its director early in production. And, you know, you could have got reviews like you could have got interviews with people talking about like how it was actually on the set. Who was directing them? You've heard in interviews like Michael Beat saying, no, Kurt Russell didn't direct me. And then you heard other people say, no, Kurt Russell did direct me. So there were plenty of options to give us new extras, but Disney did not choose to go that route. And that's very unfortunate, because that means that the only things that were upgraded are those visuals and the packaging. So 50% of this was upgraded. And that's extremely disappointing, in my opinion, for what they were charging. You know, I know most people, when they upgrade to 4K Blu-ray, they're just looking for that visual upgrade. But we're at a point now where you should be upgrading the audio as well, especially if it's an old audio track like this is. Adobe Atmos track would have been extremely appreciated. This is a movie that sounds fantastic, and I do think it needed to be tuned up, especially in the dialogue track. I thought the dialogue track was a little bit too low. Could have went in there and adjusted that. It does still sound pretty good. It does still make great use of your ears. It's just not something that knocked my socks off, and it's a real shame, because then when you do get to the visuals are a noticeable upgrade over the previously released Blu-ray, which is a pretty good Blu-ray. So that means that the visuals themselves are really good. The high dynamic range was doing a great job. You get HDR10 and Dolby Vision. Early in the film, when we were introduced to Doc Holliday, and he's in this bar, the saloon, he's playing poker, and they got like the red lights on the ceiling. You never really noticed that before, but because of the HDR, that's the stuff that's going to stick out. This is a movie that was very grainy on Blu-ray. They kind of resolved that in a very good way in this 4K Blu-ray while still maintaining the grain, so thank God they didn't wipe anything clean. Everything just looks fantastic, crisp and clear. The resolution increase is very noticeable. The visuals are something I have literally no complaint about. Is it 10 out of 10? No, but it gets pretty damn close. There are like 9 out of 10 visuals here. And I know for a lot of people, that's going to be more than enough for them to pick up this movie on 4K Blu-ray. For me, I'm honestly pretty disappointed. I'm glad I have this on 4K Blu-ray. I'm glad that I have the premium packaging at this point. I still would have preferred to pick up the slipcover version and made it more affordable for myself and would have had to only spend like, hopefully like $30. That would have been an easier pill to swallow. But $40 for one movie like this, just think about what I was saying last week about The King of New York on Lionsgate Limited's release. It's almost the exact same thing, but at least with that, they gave us some new extras. Here, you're just getting a visual upgrade, and that is it. Think of just exactly what Time Cop was for Scream Factory, and this is the stuff that cannot happen. As physical media collectors, we have to like make a little bit of noise about this because this is way too much money for something that only gets a visual upgrade. And I know that they're taking advantage of people who love this movie, people who've been anticipating Tombstone. And from a business perspective, I can understand that, but that's also kind of fucked up in my opinion because you really are taking advantage of the film fam and the collectors out here who are really keeping the physical media community alive. And it almost feels like we're being threatened with the possibility of not getting these movies on 4K Blu-ray. And because of that, we're afraid to not pick up these movies or wait for a sale because the possibility is because it's Disney, these might not ever go on sale, and you're afraid that they might, even though they have said these will come back in stock because they have been selling out, which is good, but I just hope that there is a cheaper release, at least here in the United States. At least my friends over there in Region B, they can get a slipcover edition and save a little bit of money, but here in the United States, we kind of got screwed a little bit, and you have to pay a pretty penny for it, what is just a visual upgrade. So overall, what would I give this 4K Blu-ray at a score of 1 to 10? Unfortunately, I have to give Tombstone a 7 out of 10, despite the amazing visuals, because I just feel like Disney kind of took advantage of us a little bit on this one. I'm glad that Tombstone's on 4K Blu-ray. I know that's going to be enough for most people, but if I'm being honest, that's just how I felt while I was watching it, and I do feel like it should have been at least $10 cheaper. And if you're going to buy this, try and wait for a sale. $20, $25, that's the sweet spot for Tombstone. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it here for me on another episode of Let's Talk. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We also have channel membership, so if you want to become a friend of the channel, a producer for the channel like John Doe Juggalo, or a channel director like Uncle V and Kevin Kruger, or even bump it up to the bankroll members and have your choice review, and maybe possibility of a choice video each and every single month like Mr. Smelly Potato and Frank from Frank's Media Reviews. You can do all that as well. Look for all the information for that, guys, in the description below. But of course, if you got no money to throw away, don't you worry about it all. We just hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, get out in those streets, tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.